You're watching Talking About Orks. In this episode of Talking About Orks, we're going to be going over the Boyz. Ork Boyz. And we're going to be talking about how to run Ork Boyz, what configurations to put them in, and so forth. So let's jump right into Ork Boyz, of course, are troop choices. They are the core of an Ork army. Boys before toys is probably something you've heard. If not, it is something to live by when building an Ork army. Ork Boyz are amazing. They are weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 2, which of course is basically irrelevant. Strength 3 base, toughness 4, 2 attacks base. That's probably the single most surprising thing to your opponent is that each boy has 2 attacks base. 1 wound, of course, leadership 7, and they come with a 6+ armor save. All this for the amazing low price of a mere 6 points per model. You get a close combat monster with that weapon skill 4 and toughness 4. There's the Ork Boyz. You can have our minimum 10 models, maximum of 30, and for every 10 models you can take a rocket launcher or a big shooter. That means in a unit of 10 you can take 1, 20 you can take 2, or 30 you can take 3. And of course you can upgrade 1 to a knob and give him a power claw or a big choppa. So there's 3 basic ways to run a Boyz unit. The first one is of course the 12 boys and a truck. This is your Speed Freak / Evil Sons Boyz unit, and unlike the previous codex where the truck boys were something different, the truck boys are just a troop choice with a dedicated transport. So they're fast and deadly and objective takers. So what's the good points about the boys in the truck? Of course, if you go back to my truck video, I'll talk a lot about truck tactics, but having boys in them makes them very fast objective takers, almost like Eldar fast, almost. And they're still pretty deadly. I mean, 12 boys, you do have to be very careful about what you use them against, but you don't have to be afraid to use them against almost anything. My favorite is to keep the trucks and keep a truck in reserve and sling it at an objective or against a rear unit. Something. This last week I had a unit of 12 boys take on some plague bearers. So that was kind of nice, having the 12 boys just wipe out 12 plague bearers over a couple of combat phases. Don't expect that to happen very often, because plague bearers are kind of tough. But boys in the truck are a great assault unit, and using the truck means that you should almost always get the assault that you want instead of getting assaulted. Okay, the next basic way to take a boys unit is in mobs of 20. There is a good debate on running 20 boys or 30 boys mobs, because you can run 3 20 boy units or 2 30s for about the same price. It'll be a little bit more because you have an extra knob. But there's nothing wrong with either size. I mean, size doesn't matter. So anyway, 20 boys versus 30. There's really not much to say. 30 boys are much more unwieldy on the battlefield. Trying to move them around your own units, move them around terrain, and trying to get everything into assault can be a real big mess. But the 30 boys are very hard to kill off. They last a long time. They can take a lot of punishment, and you have to kill 2/3 of them for them to not be fearless, which is always a great thing. So we have here is 20 shooter boys, 30 slugger boys. I like shooter boys in units of 20 more than 30, because like I said, it gives you a little more maneuverability. You still get 2 big shooters, so they can sit back and snipe away with those 6 strength 5 shots. And these are great for taking objectives. They can sit on the objective. Anything gets close, they can start beating on it with the shooters, or come out and let the power claw do its action. Now, the shooter boys are not as good for getting stuck in as slugger boys are, because they don't have that extra attack. They're stuck with their 2 base attacks. unlike Slugger Boys. So if you're running something like against Plague Marines or a Demon of Nurgle, you probably don't want to use Shooter Boys, or Carnifex. Something like that, you don't want to use Shooter Boys. You want to try and send your Slugger Boys against those. When you do take casualties from the Shooter Boys, make sure you always take the shooters, not the big shooters. There's never a reason to take a big shooter over a shooter, because you don't gain anything from doing so, and you lose the range. So if my guys are getting shot at, I'll have the knob and 2 big shooters left and nothing else. That's happened more than once. 30 Slugger Boys, of course. There's always the dream of getting that charge of 120 attacks, because they have their 2 base attacks, a pistol, close combat weapon, 3 base attacks, 4 on the charge. I've never actually done it because they usually, take some casualties before they get there, and there'll be a lot of times where you can't get anywhere near all of them in combat. But I've come close. I think I got an 80 attacks on the charge from a single unit of boys before. Slugger Boys on foot are not as what's the word I'm looking for? Adaptable. They're not as flexible. That's the word. They're not as flexible as Shooter Boys. But what they can do much better than Shooter Boys, they get stuck in. So if you got as I said, if you want Carnifexes, Nurgle Demons, you want to use Slugger Boys, not the Shooter Boys. And don't be tempted. I got my 3 rocket guys here. I used to run rockets in my Slugger Boys all the time. Not anymore. Not with 5th edition, because when they're not fighting, they should be running towards an objective, running towards a particular unit you want to assault. They should always be running. So don't take heavy weapons in a Slugger Boy unit on foot. It's just not worth it. It's even less worth it in a truck, because a truck should always be moving either 12 to assault or 18 to move up, and the passenger should never get a chance to fire. So a heavy weapon in a truck is even less worth it. Now there's one upgrade for the Boys mob, and that's upgrading them to Ard Boys. I talked about Ard Boys a lot in my introductory video. Here we have a unit of 19 Ard Boys, which I usually run with an HQ and a battle wagon. Ard Boys is bumping up to 10 points per model, but it gives them a 4+ armor save. And holy moly, against something that isn't all power weapons, the Ard Boys are just absolutely devastating. So you can go back to my introductory video to see how I use them in a truck. Using them in a larger mob like this, in a battle wagon, is just incredible. They'll just mince and chew through whatever they can, and they're really good at getting stuck in. I mean, really good. So if you got some large units of Wraith Lords, or not Wraith Lords, but Wraith Guards, those are really good to get stuck in against because they're high toughness. Plague Bearers, those are Plague Marines. Those are also really good to get stuck in against with Ard Boys, because you're going to be making a lot more armor saves. More armor saves means fewer no retreat wounds, which means they'll be there even longer. So what are the units to avoid with Boys? Well, there's really only one unit that I fear, and that is the Khorne Berserkers. With Khorne Berserkers, you need to be able to dictate the charge, not the other way around. Well, that was interesting. Pretty much anything else, don't be afraid. Send the boys in. Let them do what they can. I mean, if you lose a boys unit, that's why you need to take a lot of boys, because you might lose a unit from shooting. You might lose a unit to Khorne Berserkers. You need to have more boys to survive. That way, you have more boys left over to survive those kind of setbacks. And you can still get your objectives. You can still assault with the remaining boys. Boys are great at counter assault. Boys rock in counter assault. Let Strike and his termies come. Let them kill the first unit of boys, and then now suddenly you have 60, 80, 90 boys coming down to hurt those Thunderhammers like they'd never been hurt before. So Ork Boys, they are without a doubt one of the best troop choices in the game. And always remember, boys before toys.